I'm very excited to be here with all of you. And let me just put this in slideshow mode. And let's get right into it. So I'll give you a little bit of background on me and why I have some credibility in terms of what I'm going to share. I'm going to talk a little bit about who's a CIO today and what are they trying to accomplish, what makes their agenda. And one of the big pet peeves I'm going to talk about is why product selling doesn't work anymore, especially with CIOs, and what steps can you take to respond so that you can be effective in your marketing and your sellers can be effective in their selling. So this is a little bit on me. Thank you, Carter, for continuing to rank me as number one. I'm also a significant digital influencer, and I write for a number of magazines, and I get a lot of my learning from the CIO chat, which was actually started by John Dodge at CIO magazine. So I've been running it now for 5 years, and we run an event once a year. We've been doing them virtual for the last 2 years, but it looks like we're going to go live and do the first live event at Boston College, where CIOs can get to hear from each other on how they're dealing with meaty topics like digital transformation and cloud computing and the rest. So let me start by looking at, where is the CIO today and what's important for them. And if you haven't caught it, there's a huge sea state change that's happened for CIOs. I put the picture of Cynthia Stoddard, who's on our board. She's the CIO of Adobe here. But CIOs really have moved from a utility kind of way of thinking to more and more being focused on transformation of their organizations. And so one of the things that's always been important to them, but has become critical, is that they're aligned to the business. In fact, they're not only aligned to the business today, they're a person that is a business leader that just happens to understand technology. For them, they're re-educating their teams to speak in the language of business, not in the language of bits and bytes. And that's a big change, because if you come in speaking in terms of technology, you're going to miss an opportunity. Your sellers will be pushed further down in the organization. They're trying to be more strategic. Obviously, they're not building quite as much. And if they're building something, it has to do with transformation and data and things like that. And they're trying as well to create more flexibility and the ability to respond to change faster. They've complained to me for a long time that they're doing too many things at the same time. What's happened now is they've gotten crystal clear and focused on a lot of different things. In particular, things like employee experience, which were probably lower priorities, have snuck their head up during the crisis to be critical, and transformation has become, absolutely critical, because if you ruin your customer experience in the process, you're likely in trouble there as well. One of the big things that they tell me all the time, and therefore I'm telling you, is that you shouldn't be selling the product, you should be selling how you solve their pain point. So they're looking for you to come in with the language of solutions. The other point, which is important to both you in approaching them and your sellers in approaching them, is that when they take a meeting, they'll most likely have a business person in the meeting. And if you start speaking, as I said, buzzwords, what's going to happen is you're going to be dropped, your sellers going to be dropped lower in the organization. And that's a problem. And so that also means that your content, from a marketing point of view, as somebody who's spent a long time in their career focused on creating compelling content, if it's not talking to business problems, it's not going to get their attention. In addition, if you own a a telesales function of some kind, if they aren't able to talk to problems, they're not going to get through to either the CIO or to people who are just under them. One of the things that CIOs have said to me repeatedly during the crisis is a lot of the trust is gone. I wrote a piece, and you're welcome to go look at it in Datamation a while back on how the model's broken as they see it. And you can hear specifically some of the comments that the CIOs have to do. But also some of it was that sellers got so still concerned about making their number for the quarter early on when the crisis happened, when they were just trying to figure out the basics. Do they have any budget or not? I mean, if the stock market crashes, take something like insurance, you're going to end up in a position where they may have half the budget because suddenly now the business is making half the money. So, I mean, there are crazy things that happen, and if you can't respond in a way that's trustful, then you look like a vendor rather than a partner. And what they want going forward are partners. And then obviously, the idea that you're going to just throw a lot of stuff at them and hopefully they'll respond and your sellers will hopefully respond isn't really working anymore. The vendors you're going to cut through the noise are going to have a message that matters. And I remember several years ago reading a great book on market positioning. And one of the things they talked about is that you needed to speak in the language of the customer about what was going on if you're going to break through all the other noise that they're hearing in the marketplace. So it's clearly an opportunity for us marketeers to sharpen our skills and to get better at actually responding to customers' needs. John McMahon wrote this really interesting book called The Qualified Sales Leader. And one of the things that he talks about in the book, the key takeaway for our marketeers, is that if you're selling feature and function, you're going to have two problems. One is you're going to end up with smaller deals. The second is you're going to sell lower in the organization. Well, the CIOs have confirmed that to me. If they've got a business person in the room when you meet with them and you're not talking to the business problem, you're not going to get through. The other thing and we as marketeers have to do this too. So we have to understand what's the sense of urgency. Why is it what we do solves the problem, and that creates the urgency to actually buy? And that's an important thing for us to know because we're providing, the early cover. I like to think of marketing as like the artillery that's softening things up so the sales infantry can make and win. One of the things I've noticed, and I'd love when we get into the question and answer whether you see the same thing, but I do kind of see an interesting dividing line between companies that are Series A and B, which is a founder and a product, and companies that are Series C and D, which are naturally making this transition to more of focusing on the customer and their solutions. And again, if you can get after the business problems that the CIO is trying to solve and attach yourself to that, you're not only going to accelerate your growth, but you're going to make the transition to larger deals, which is the thing that naturally the venture investors are looking for as you're making that move into larger rounds of financing. So what do CIOs want? They want partners that listen and hear their pains. They want content that responds to their needs. Now, some of this obviously will involve throwing a little bit of an industry bent over time into what you're doing, but they want your digital assets to point them in the right direction, to say, hey, look, there's really an answer to what I'm trying to solve. They want everything to kind of be focused on that. And the companies that are going to do really well are the ones who can really reflect in everything they do on how do I communicate well to a CIO about the pains they have. Now, sometimes that means you need to do an element of discovery. I get to do that every week when we run CIO chat. I get to kind of discover why they have this pain. It was very interesting. I got to do this recently for self-service BI and found out it was a little different in terms of what they were trying to do and accomplish versus what was going on in digital transformation. So, those kinds of things are really important, is to get the right message so you get through the door in talking to them. This is my friend David, and David is a higher educational CIO, but I thought what he had to say here was really interesting. He doesn't want to get hammered, and this is why oftentimes CIOs won't do. I know there's all of these wonderful concepts about inbound marketing and things like that, but you won't tend to see a CIO provide their contact information to read an asset. Even my friends who are CIOs, when they knew I created an asset, wouldn't do that. However, I do find that if you can put meaningful events, they will give you their contact information. So one little trick is to start with a meaningful event that they'd actually want to attend, and then you can have the permission to contact them, but don't hammer them with too much stuff. I'm amazed at these companies that are constantly, even people that I have relationships with, are hammering me with content all the time. And I'm just simply not ready to do more than one purchase per period of time. So a couple of little takeaways from today, and then we'll get into the Q&A. I want you to think about the fact that as much as time and effort that you've put into creating that great product or set of products and its features and functionality, it's time to move beyond that. Understand at minimum why that product you've developed, why it's useful, and what it actually solves. Figure out how that your content can be tailored, both solution and benefit. Have clarity on what the impacts are. So CIOs are not necessarily always looking for a simple ROI analysis, but they want to know what the value is. And one more little secret I haven't put in the slide, but I should have. One of the things that I asked CIOs recently had to do with, let's say you have something that's costing you a lot of money. Think of all the infrastructure that connects everything together as an example. Would you replace that if it's costing you just a lot of money? And they said, generally not. There has to be a business impact to it. So what if I replace how I integrate everything together, what am I going to get out of it? Well, generally you'll get business agility out of it is one of the things, but it's the business side of the equation, which is critical when they're doing very, very large deals. And at my previous company, I helped close a $20 million deal, which was the largest they'd ever closed with one company. But the thing that pushed it over the finish line was when I got the customer to actually enunciate, what that value is. Well, if you can help them, and this is where case studies become really important. If you can get your case studies to be great at talking about that, it's going to be helpful. Do less, phone calls, less emails, less white papers. They don't want to get hounded on LinkedIn. They didn't give you permission to contact them constantly. The other thing they're saying, they're really trying to get out of a proof of concept, a proof of value. Will it really solve the problem that I'm going after? So make sure that you help with them, if they haven't done it, define what the value is and then do the POC that way. And then lastly, less buzzword bingo. There was one of the companies I worked for a few years ago got written up in the Wall Street Journal because they'd used so many buzzwords in describing their product. Don't use less buzzwords and more real simple explanations that are relatable. If you can do those things, you can break through with CIOs. But my hope today is that this has been insightful for you.